White lights, studio set. Jean Harlow collapses into Clark Gable's arms like a falling star. The year is 1937. Saratoga, the film that will never be finished. She's 26 years old, platinum hair catching the lights one last time, and her body is shutting down. Kidney failure, uremic poisoning. The kind of death that happens slowly and then all at once. Gable carries her off set. She weighs almost nothing. He will later say she whispered, "Don't worry, Clark, I'll be fine." It's the last thing he hears her say. 3 days later, she's dead. Hollywood didn't call an ambulance, it called cut. But here's what nobody talks about. At her funeral, MGM aims silver spotlights at her face in the casket, makes her skin glow like porcelain, like she's still on camera, still performing. Variety will write, "She looked like she was still shooting a scene from a Hollywood dream." They couldn't let her be dead. They needed her to be beautiful one more time. She wasn't Hollywood's first star, she was its first offering. "The light that flatters you will also burn you," Jean once wrote in her diary. She understood before anyone else that Hollywood doesn't create goddesses. It creates fuel. And Jean Harlow burned brighter and faster than anyone expected. But to understand how a girl from Kansas City became the first blonde bombshell, the original sacrifice on the altar of American glamour, we must go back. Back to before the platinum hair and the sex symbol status. Back to when she was still Harlan, still learning that beauty could be currency, weapon, and cage all at once. Back to the girl who just wanted to be seen. Kansas City, Missouri, March 3, 1911. Middle-class respectability and quiet desperation. Harlean Harlow Carpenter is born into a family that understands image matters more than reality. Her mother, also named Jean, is beautiful, ambitious, and trapped by the limitations placed on women in early 20th century America. Her father is a dentist, stable, boring, everything Jean Harlow Carpenter married to escape and now regrets not escaping. Young Harlan, called Baby by everyone, is beautiful from birth. Not cute. Beautiful. The kind of beauty that makes adults stop mid-conversation. Platinum blonde hair that looks artificial but isn't. Wide-set eyes. A face that photographs like it was designed by a studio art department. Her mother notices immediately. Sees in her daughter's face the life she never got to live. Starts calling her the baby Jean Harlow, using her own maiden name, already branding the child before Hollywood even enters the picture. Could a mother's unfulfilled dreams become a daughter's prison? Or was Harlan always destined to become someone else's projection? Harlan's childhood is comfortable but cold. Her parents' marriage is dissolving. Her mother is increasingly focused on Harlan's appearance. The right clothes, the right hair, the right way to enter a room. Training her daughter for a life of being looked at. There are photographs from this period. Harlean at 5, dressed in white lace, posed like a porcelain doll. Harlean at 8, hair curled perfectly, smile practiced. Not the smile of a child playing, the smile of a child performing. Already learning that her value lies in how she looks, not who she is. Her father sees it, tries to intervene, wants his daughter to have a normal childhood. But he's outnumbered, outmaneuvered. Mama Jean has already decided Harlean's future. And in 1920s America, mothers control daughters the way studios will later control starlets. At 16, Harlean elopes with a young businessman named Charles McGrew. It's an escape from her mother's control, from Kansas City. From the feeling that she's a doll being dressed for a performance she never auditioned for, they move to Los Angeles, 1928. The golden age of silent film is ending. Talkies are coming. Hollywood is in transition, which means it's hungry for new faces, new voices, new products to sell. Harlean has no interest in acting. She's a wealthy young wife playing at being an adult, but her mother follows them to Los Angeles. And her mother has other plans. Jean Harlow Carpenter, who now calls herself Mama Jean, starts taking Harlean to casting calls. using her married name, Harleen McGrew, then switching to Jean Harlow because it sounds better. More sophisticated, more star-like. Harleen does it to keep her mother quiet. Shows up to auditions, gets bit parts, background work. She's beautiful enough to be noticed but hasn't learned to perform yet. She's just a girl standing in front of a camera waiting for someone to tell her what to do. Then 1929, she meets Howard Hughes. Hughes is directing Hell's Angels, a World War I aviation epic that's already over budget and behind schedule. His lead actress, Greta Nissen, has a thick Norwegian accent that doesn't work for talkies. He needs a replacement. Someone who can be sexy and innocent simultaneously. Someone who looks like sin but sounds like Sunday morning. He sees Jean Harlow. Not Harley and the girl. Jean Harlow, the product, the thing Mama Jean has been building. Hughes doesn't ask if she can act, doesn't care. He sees a face and a body that the camera will love. That's enough. The role requires John to deliver one line that will become infamous. Would you be shocked if I put on something more comfortable? It's innuendo. It's calculated sexuality. It's everything Hollywood is about to become in the pre-code era. Jean delivers it perfectly. Not because she's a great actress, she's not yet. But because she doesn't understand she's supposed to be ashamed. She says it like a girl asking a genuine question. The innocence makes it more erotic. Hell's Angels is released in 1930. Jean Harlow becomes a star overnight, not because of her acting. Critics are brutal about her performance, but because of how she looks. Platinum blonde, curves poured into bias-cut satin, a new kind of sexuality for a new kind of cinema. The press calls her the platinum blonde. It's both compliment and reduction. She's not a person anymore. She's a thing, a phenomenon, a product that Hollywood can market. MGM signs her. Louis B. Mayer sees dollar signs. Irving Thalberg sees potential. They put her under contract and start the real construction of Jean Harlow. First, the hair. Her natural blonde isn't platinum enough. They bleach it with a mixture of peroxide, ammonia, and Lux soap flakes. The chemicals burn her scalp. She develops sores. Her hair becomes brittle, breaks off. But it photographs like spun silver. So she keeps doing it. Every few weeks, the pain is just another cost of business. Every touch-up was a benediction in peroxide. Holiness always came with a chemical burn. The studio hairdresser, a woman named Marie, will later give an interview. She'll describe how Jean would sit in the chair, tears streaming down her face from the chemical burns, and never complain. Never ask them to stop. Just grip the armrests until her knuckles turned white and wait for the pain to pass. She understood, Marie will say. The pain was part of the contract. You want to be a star? This is what it costs. How many women have sat in that same chair since? How many have felt that same burn and said nothing because beauty, after all, is supposed to hurt? They teach her how to walk, how to stand, how to lower her voice into that distinctive purr, how to make every movement suggest sex without being vulgar, how to be available and untouchable at the same time. There are voice coaches, movement specialists, even a consultant brought in to teach her the art of the glance, how to look at a man through the camera in a way that makes every man in the audience think she's looking at him. I wasn't born a bombshell, she writes in her diary. Hollywood built me one curl at a time. She's not wrong. Jean Harlow is a construction, a careful assembly of bleached hair, bias-cut gowns, calculated poses, and a persona that suggests she's always 1 second away from taking off her clothes but never quite does. But here's what nobody expects. Jean is funny, genuinely, naturally funny. She has timing. She can deliver a line with just enough edge to make it sharp. She understands innuendo not as something dirty but as something playful. It's the one part of Jean Harlow that's actually Harlan. The humor, the quick wit, the ability to laugh at herself and the absurdity of what she's become. Red Dust comes out in 1932. Jean plays opposite Clark Gable. She's a prostitute with a heart of gold and a mouth like a sailor. It's the first time anyone sees that Jean Harlow can actually act, that she's not just a body in a dress but a performer with instincts. Gable will later say, "Jean was the only woman who made me forget I was acting. She was so present, so real that you couldn't help but be real back." They have chemistry, the kind you can't fake, the kind that makes audiences believe in every moment they share on screen. There are rumors of an affair. Maybe, maybe not. What's certain is that Gable sees Jean, the actual person underneath the platinum hair, and Jean sees him back. On set, they develop a shorthand, a way of communicating without words. He can tell when she's tired, when the performance is costing her too much. She can tell when he's protecting her from the director, from the cameraman, from the studio executives who see her as nothing but meat and curves. For a brief moment, she's happy. She's working, she's good at it. She's not just a symbol anymore, she's an actress. Once, between takes, she kicked off her heels and ran barefoot across the soundstage. For 10 seconds, she wasn't Jean Harlow, just Harleen, breathless, laughing. Then someone yelled, "Places!" and she disappeared again. Gable saw it. That flash of the real girl underneath the construction. He'll remember it later when he's carrying her dying body off the set of Saratoga. He'll remember that for just a moment she got to be herself. Then Paul Byrne happens. Paul Byrne is an MGM executive, a producer, cultured, intellectual, 22 years older than Jean. He pursues her with the intensity of someone who thinks he can save her from being Jean Harlow and help her become Harlan again. He writes her letters, quotes poetry, talks about cinema as art, not commerce, sees her performances and tells her she's wasted on sex comedies, that she could be a serious actress, that she's more than what MGM has made her. Jean wants to believe him. Wants to believe that someone can see past the platinum hair and the satin gowns to the girl from Kansas City who never wanted any of this. They marry in July 1932. It's fast, too fast. Jean is 21, Byrne is 43. Mama Jean approves because Byrne is connected, powerful, can advance Jean's career. The marriage lasts 2 months. On September 5, 1932, Paul Byrne is found dead in their home. Gunshot wound to the head. Apparent suicide. A note beside him reads, "This is the only way to make good the frightful wrong I have done you and to wipe out my abject humiliation." The note is vague enough to suggest everything and confirm nothing. Impotence, abuse, some secret so terrible that death is preferable to living with it. MGM goes into damage control. They need to protect Jean. More accurately, they need to protect their investment in Jean. So they craft a narrative. Tragic accident, unstable man, young widow who knew nothing. Studio fixers arrive at the house before the police. Evidence is moved. Stories are coordinated. By the time the authorities arrive, the scene has been staged to tell a particular story. One that keeps Jean clean. One that keeps MGM clean. The press isn't kind. They call Jean a curse. A woman whose beauty is so powerful it drives men to destruction. She becomes the girl who brings death. Jean doesn't defend herself publicly. Can't. MGM controls the narrative, but privately she asks a question that nobody answers. Why do they protect the dead and not the living? The truth about Paul Byrne's death will be debated for decades. Suicide, murder, accident. What's certain is that Jean Harlow, 21 years old, becomes a widow with a reputation as someone dangerous to love. She keeps working. What else can she do? MGM owns her contract. Mama Jean controls her finances. She has no choice but to be Jean Harlow, platinum blonde bombshell, even when she feels like Harlene's scared girl, traumatized widow. Bombshell comes out in 1933. It's a comedy about a movie star whose life is controlled by her manager, her family, the press. Jean plays a woman trapped by her own image. It's the most honest performance of her career because she's not acting. She's documenting. There's a scene where her character tries to run away, tries to be normal. Goes to a small town, adopts a fake identity, pretends she's just an ordinary woman. For a brief, beautiful moment, she's free. Then someone recognizes her. The cameras show up. The performance begins again. Jane understood. You can't escape what you've become. The image follows you everywhere. Even when you're trying to be human, people only see the goddess. Critics will later call it prophecy disguised as satire. Jean will call it the only time Hollywood let me tell the truth. She throws herself into work. Film after film, Dinner at 8, Reckless. Wife versus Secretary, she's box office gold, one of MGM's biggest stars. But she's also exhausted. The bleaching damages her scalp, the tight costumes hurt her body. The constant performance of being Jean Harlow is eating away at who Harlean actually is. She starts having health problems, fatigue, pain. She ignores them, everyone ignores them. Because Jean Harlow isn't allowed to be sick. Jean Harlow is platinum perfection. The studio doctor gives her pills. For energy, for pain, for sleep. She takes them without asking what they are. Because Jean Harlow does what she's told. Because the show must go on. Because her body is not her own. It's MGM property, and MGM decides when it works and when it rests. She dates Harold Rosen, a cinematographer, William Powell, an actor. These relationships are gentler than Paul Byrne, but they're also shadowed by Mama Jean, who monitors everything, and by MGM, who wants to control her image. With Powell, she seems genuinely happy. He's kind, patient, treats her like a person instead of a goddess. They talk about marriage, about leaving Hollywood, about Jean becoming Harlan again. One evening, sitting with Powell in the quiet of her dressing room, she says, "Everyone loves John Harlow. I just wish someone would ask how Harlan's doing." Powell looks at her for a long moment. "How is Harlan doing?" She doesn't answer, can't, because she doesn't know anymore. But Mama Jean disapproves of Powell. MGM disapproves. Jean Harlow can't marry William Powell because it doesn't fit the narrative. The blonde bombshell doesn't get a quiet, happy ending. So she stays. Keeps working, keeps smiling, keeps being the thing everyone needs her to be. Her diary entries from this period are brief, bitter. "Dear God, I'm still acting." By 1937, she's 26 and has been a star for 7 years. In Hollywood years, that's ancient. She's seen other blonde bombshells come and go. Knows her shelf life is limited. But she has one more film, Saratoga, with Clark Gable again. The chemistry that made Red Dust a hit. She arrives on set already sick, fatigue so deep it feels like drowning, pain in her abdomen that won't stop. But she works anyway, because Jean Harlow always works. The crew notices she's pale, sweating. Between takes, she sits with her eyes closed, gathering strength just to stand up again. Gable notices, asks if she's okay. She gives him that smile, the Jean Harlow smile that sells tickets, and says she's fine. She's not fine. During one scene, she collapses, just crumples. Gable catches her. She's burning up, delirious. He carries her off set, and for a moment, the construction falls away. She's not Jean Harlow, platinum blonde bombshell. She's just a sick girl who weighs nothing. They take her home. Mama John, still controlling everything, doesn't call a doctor immediately. Believes in Christian Science. Believes prayer will heal. Believes anything except that her daughter, her creation, might be dying. Hours pass. Jean's condition worsens. She's vomiting. Can't keep water down. Her skin takes on a grayish tint, but Mama Jean prays. Refuses medical intervention. Because to admit Jean is sick is to admit that the construction is failing, that the goddess is mortal. By the time they finally get Jean to the hospital, it's too late. Her kidneys have failed, uremic poisoning. Her body is shutting down. The doctors are furious. If they'd been called sooner, they might have saved her, might have. But now there's nothing to do but make her comfortable and wait for the end. She's unconscious most of the last 3 days. When she wakes briefly, she asks for William Powell. He comes, sits beside her, holds her hand, tells her she's going to be fine. She knows he's lying, knows she's dying. Manages to whisper something the nurse will later report. "I hope heaven has no makeup lights." Jean Harlow dies on June 7, 1937. She's 26 years old. She's made 22 films. She's been a star for 7 years. She's been Jean Harlow for most of her adult life. And now, she's dead. The funeral is a spectacle. MGM makes sure of that. They dress her in a pink gown, style her platinum hair one last time, aim those silver spotlights at her face so she glows, so she looks like she's still on camera, still performing. 40,000 people line the streets. Nelson Eddy sings. Jeanette MacDonald sings. Hollywood's elite fill the church, but the person who matters most is silent. Clark Gable doesn't give a eulogy, doesn't speak at all, just places a single white rose on her casket. Later, he'll tell a friend, Jean didn't know she was great. Maybe that's why she was. William Powell is devastated, pays for the entire funeral, wears black for months. Will never quite recover from losing her. MGM calculates how to finish Saratoga, uses a body double for the remaining scenes, releases the film 2 weeks after Jean's death. It becomes her biggest box office success, because America wants to see Jean Harlow one more time, even if she's technically dead. The press writes tributes. The platinum blonde is gone. Hollywood's brightest star is burned out. They treat her death like a tragedy, but also like an inevitability, as if women who look like Jean Harlow are supposed to die young, as if beauty that bright can't possibly last. But here's what they miss. Jean Harlow didn't die young because she was beautiful. She died young because Hollywood consumed her, used her body as a product until her body gave out, bleached her hair until her scalp was scarred, worked her until exhaustion became her baseline, created an image so demanding that the person underneath couldn't survive maintaining it. In Hollywood, a woman's body isn't her home. It's leased property with no right of renewal. John once wrote to a friend, "If I die young, don't make a tragedy, make a toast." But Hollywood made a tragedy anyway. Because tragedy sells. Because a dead blonde bombshell is more valuable than a living woman. Because Jean Harlow the myth is more profitable than Harleen the person ever could have been. In the years after her death, her films continue to play. Her image continues to sell. The platinum blonde hair becomes iconic. Other actresses bleach their hair trying to capture what she had. Marilyn Monroe will study her films, learn from her, eventually become the next blonde bombshell Hollywood destroys. The cycle continues. Because Hollywood didn't learn from Jean Harlow's death, they learned that dead blonde bombshells are excellent marketing. Scholars study her films now, write about her comedy timing, her chemistry with Gable, her ability to be sexy without being intimidating. They call her an original, a trailblazer, the first sex symbol of the sound era. What they mean is, she was the first woman Hollywood figured out how to package sexuality as a product. She was the prototype. Everything that came after, the platinum blondes, the bombshells, the sex symbols who died young, they all trace back to Jean Harlow. But if you watch her films closely, you can see something the marketing doesn't show. You can see a woman who's funny, smart, self-aware, who knew she was performing and occasionally let you see that she knew, who could deliver a line with just enough irony to suggest she understood exactly what was happening to her. In Bombshell, she plays a star who's trapped by her image. In one scene, she looks directly at the camera and says, "I'm not a bombshell, I'm a human being." The line is supposed to be funny, but watch her eyes when she says it. She means it. That's the Jean Harlow nobody talks about. The one who understood she was a construction and occasionally tried to dismantle herself. The one who wrote, "Dear God, I'm still acting" in her diary every night. The one who wanted to be a girl instead of a goddess. But Hollywood doesn't want girls, it wants goddesses, and goddesses aren't allowed to be human. There's a photograph of Jean from 1936, a year before she died. She's sitting on set between takes. No makeup, hair wrapped in a scarf. She's eating a sandwich and laughing at something off camera. She looks young, happy, real. The photograph was never published. It didn't fit the image. In her will, Jean left most of her estate to Mama Jean, the woman who controlled her career, her money, her life. People called it generous. Others called it tragic. The truth is probably simpler. Jean Harlow had been trained from birth to give everything to the people who managed her image. Even in death, she couldn't escape the performance. William Powell never married again. Would say when asked that he'd already met the love of his life, that she'd been gone since 1937. He keeps a photograph of her. Not a publicity still. Not Jean Harlow, the star, but that unpublished photo from 1936. Jean in a scarf, eating a sandwich, laughing. He keeps it in his wallet until he dies in 1984. 47 years carrying the image of the woman she might have been if Hollywood had let her. Clark Gable would name Jean as the best actress he ever worked with. Would say she made him better. Would keep that white rose pressed between pages of a book until he died. On the set of Gone with the Wind, 2 years after Jean's death, Gable will have a breakdown. The pressure, the scrutiny, the endless performance. And he'll think of Jean, of how she did this for 7 years, of how she never complained, of how it killed her. They wanted her to be perfect, he'll tell Vivian Leigh. They got what they wanted, and they killed her for it. Mama Jean lived until 1958. Managed Jean's estate, sold the rights to Jean's life story multiple times. Different versions, different narratives, all carefully constructed to protect the myth of Jean Harlow while erasing the reality of Harlean Carpenter. In interviews, she'll describe her daughter as born to be a star, as if Jean Harlow was inevitable, as if Harleen never had a choice, as if the woman who bleached her daughter's hair until it fell out, who pushed her into a career she never wanted, who refused medical care until it was too late, as if that woman was just a loving mother helping her daughter achieve her dreams. The house where Jean died was eventually demolished. The hospital where she spent her last days was torn down. The physical spaces that held her final moments were erased. But the films remain. The image remains. Jean Harlow, frozen at 26, platinum hair and white satin, forever young, forever perfect, forever performing. In Hollywood, they still talk about the Jean Harlow type. Blonde, sexy, funny, dead by 30. It's said casually, like it's just a category, not a warning, not an indictment, just a type. But every time someone bleaches their hair platinum, every time a young actress is told to be sexy but not threatening, every time beauty is treated as a commodity that can be extracted until the source runs dry, that's Jean Harlow's legacy. Not the films, not the performances, the system that created her and killed her and then sold her death as glamorous. There's a quote from Marion Davies, Jean's friend, that captures it perfectly. Jean was light, but light that bright doesn't live long. It's poetic, it's tragic, it's also a lie. Because Jean Harlow wasn't light that burned too bright. She was a woman who was burned by chemicals, by expectations, by a system that needed her to be platinum perfection every single day until her body couldn't take it anymore. She didn't die of kidney failure. She died of being Jean Harlow, and the difference matters. In the archives, there's a recording of Jean from 1935. A screen test or an interview, the source isn't clear. She's asked what she wants people to remember about her. She laughs, that big, unguarded laugh she was famous for, and says, "I hope they remember I wasn't just a blonde. I hope they remember I was funny." Then quieter, "I hope they remember I tried to be human." It's one of the few moments where Harlan speaks instead of John Harlow, where the girl from Kansas City breaks through the platinum construction. It lasts maybe 5 seconds. Then she's back, smiling for the camera. Being what everyone needs her to be, the recording is rarely played. It doesn't fit the narrative. Jean Harlow isn't supposed to be vulnerable or human. She's supposed to be a goddess. And goddesses don't try to be human. They just are what they are until they aren't anymore. If you visit Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, you can see Jean's crypt. It's marble, elegant. The inscription reads, "Our baby." Mama Jean's final claim of ownership, even in death. Tourists take photos, point, whisper about the platinum blonde, about how she died so young, about how tragic it all was. They don't ask why. Don't question the system that created the tragedy, just observe it. Photograph it. Move on to the next grave. But sometimes, late at night when the cemetery is closed, the caretakers say they can hear something. Maybe it's the wind. Maybe it's imagination. But it sounds like laughter. Big, loud, unguarded laughter. The kind Jean Harlow was famous for. The kind that made her human when everyone wanted her to be divine. Maybe it's Harleyan. Finally allowed to laugh without worrying about the cameras. Finally allowed to be the girl instead of the goddess. Finally free from the platinum hair and the white satin and the performance that killed her. Or maybe it's just the wind. And Jean Harlow is still wherever goddesses go when Hollywood is done with them. Still platinum, still perfect, still 26 forever. They called me a goddess, she wrote in her diary. I just wanted to be a girl. She never got to be just a girl. Hollywood wouldn't allow it. The image was too valuable. The product was too profitable. Jean Harlow, the bombshell, was worth more than Harleyan Carpenter, the person. And so she died being Jean Harlow. Platinum hair and white satin and silver spotlights. Died on camera, essentially, because even her death was staged for maximum effect. The light that flatters you will also burn you. Jean Harlow knew that, wrote it down, lived it, died proving it. And Hollywood learned nothing. The next platinum blonde was already being bleached. The next bombshell was already being constructed. The next goddess was already being prepared for sacrifice. Because that's what Hollywood does. It doesn't create stars, it creates fuel. And Jean Harlow burned so bright, so fast that by the time anyone realized she was dying, it was too late to save her. The spotlights still shine on her grave, still make her look like she's glowing, still won't let her rest in darkness, still performing, even in death, especially in death. One day the bulbs will burn out, and for the first time she'll rest in darkness that doesn't want anything from her. That's Hollywood's final gift, immortality as a product. Forever young, forever platinum, forever the thing they needed her to be. Jean Harlow would have laughed at that big, loud, unguarded laugh. Then probably said something funny and true and completely inappropriate, then gone back to being the goddess everyone needed. Because that's what goddesses do. They give until there's nothing left. And then they give more, until the light burns out, until the cameras stop, until there's nothing left but the myth and the films and the girl from Kansas City who never got to go home. Was Jean Harlow the actress or the act? And if you spend your whole life being what others need, do you ever get to find out who you actually are? If beauty is currency, who pays when the bank runs dry? Or maybe we're all investors, profiting from the burn. The cameras stopped rolling. The lights went dark. Jean Harlow left the set for the last time. But somewhere in those films, in those frames, in those moments between the performance, you can still see her. Harleyan, the girl from Kansas City who just wanted to be seen. Not worshipped, not consumed. Just seen. And maybe that's enough. Maybe being seen, even briefly, even between the platinum curls and the satin gowns, even in the moments when she forgot to be Jean Harlow and accidentally was herself. Maybe that's worth something. Or maybe Hollywood consumed her so completely that there's nothing left but the image. The platinum hair, the white satin, the smile that sold 1 million tickets. Maybe Jean Harlow was always just Jean Harlow. And Harlan was just a girl who died at 16 when she became somebody else's dream.